So I'm just going to talk about. I just had an interesting conversation with a friend and made me start thinking. I've been studying astrology for the best part of 30 years. In different forms anyway, different guises. I mean, I didn't really start intense study until about a decade ago, but I just played with it for 20 years. And she asked me a question. She says, do you really think we are free to manifest whatever we want? Or do you believe in some type of fate or predestination based on a natal chart? And I thought that was a very interesting question because it's something I thought about a while ago until I came to a satisfactory answer for myself. And that is, what the natal chart contains is not things per se, but desires. And every planetary type is a type of desire within human consciousness. And in an earlier dissertation, or an earlier podcast or whatever, I explained how the planets actually affect human psychology, why they affect human psychology. It's not. And that the connection lies in the fact that when you look at a planetary body, or when you look at anything for that matter, it's a concept. Because what you can perceive of that thing, we perceive as concepts. That's why we can create information, we can decode information, create information, seeking knowledge and all that, because we are in possession of a brain, a complex brain that is complex enough to generate self-awareness. Now, the process by which that happens is extremely complex. But the brain works as a whole to simulate self-consciousness. And the simulation of self-consciousness is just a small part of everything that the brain is doing. But it's one of the most important parts. You can say that it's almost as if the human brain, the shape of it, the 5 vesicular nature of it, especially the shape of the skull, and how the brain is encased within the cranium. It's almost as if all that, it was the perfect staging ground for the development of self-consciousness. And that self-consciousness in itself, as we feel it, as we experience it, is a concept space. So our personality, the consciousness which we feel as I or I am, is a concept about ourselves. So that is the concept space giving us insight into our own self-nature. And that that infinitely regenerative that regenerative loop cycle, that is what we call self-consciousness. And so when these massive orbs that surround the earth, they move, and all the rotations and the revolutions, and it's all about angular momentum. And and that's how, I went into a lot of details. I went into a lot of detail when I spoke about this in an earlier podcast. I think it was a few months ago. So I'm not going to go deep into that. But suffice to say, that the root drives that are captured within a natal chart, they could play out in so many different ways because they are nothing but desires. So when a child is born and the ascendant is fixed and the instantiation of the heavens manifests on earth, then how much choice does that child really have in the nature of desires which they possess? Now, that you could think of this as a soul had an agreement and then matched that desire, or you can think of it as nothing like that. It doesn't matter. What we're discussing is the moment of birth. A baby does not have a choice on the type of desires that it has come to possess. Now, the only thing that will be important all through life is the expression or suppression of the desires as they are coded within the child. Now, so whatever it is you can manifest must be a potential outcome of what is of the desires as they are coded within you. You cannot give what you don't have, but you see the space of, the combination of all the desires and the potential desires and how they play out. It's almost infinite. It's the combinatorial effect is, that's why no two people are alike. No two people are exactly alike. And so, freedom, which is is the analogy I would use when I talk about the ability to just manifest whatever. So that's like freedom, unmitigated, unconstrained freedom. And then that freedom is constrained by the pattern of desire that a child is born with. So it is a particular unique configuration in the expression, the full total expression of all desires. So it's a set, it's a subset within the sea of all types of infinite desires. So in that way, a human psyche takes on a particular structure within this infinite sea. It carves out a particular space, just like how a function carves, maybe a complex function carves face space, constrains certain aspects, like a graph. So that's how humans, within the space of that graph, that is the potential for manifestation. And so, for instance, if you have to win the lottery, astrologically, you must be able, there's an aspect of your consciousness or your psyche that is able to receive that concept before it becomes manifest. There must be something about the nature of your desires that can bring such to existence, that can accommodate such, that won't reject it. Then it happens. Or then there's a possibility that it can happen. But if the nature of your desire is such that there is no possibility of being able to accept on any level of the psyche such unmerited gains, then that outcome doesn't form part of the space of the possible, of the combinations of all those desires. And the same thing, winning a lottery is extreme luck, right? The same thing can be said with any other type of phenomenon, basically. And some people say, okay, how does this connect to genetics? Because if you look at science, astrology is not recognized as mainstream science. So most people in the world today will probably believe that genetics forms an essential part or genetics basically controls behavior, not astrological whatever. Okay, that's fair enough. That's a fair argument, considering that the world is currently built around scientific thinking such as this. But their similarity, as far as I'm concerned, and from my perspective, comes from the fact that they are both complex systems. Genetic expression and genetic switching and all that is a complex system. The solar system is a complex system. The constellations that form, that are mapped out in the plane of the ecliptic, and all, these are all complex systems. Okay? Now, it is my theory that different types of complex systems have affinities for each other. They're not your